You're standing in a crowded elevator, and for a split second, you make eye contact with a coworker you barely know. They smile and ask the one question you've been dreading all morning. How was your weekend? You feel a physical tightening in your chest, a sudden urge to stare at the floor, and a desperate hope that the doors open before you have to answer. It's not that you're mean, and it's not that you have nothing to say, but for you, the ritual of talking about the weather or Friday night's game feels like moving through quicksand. Most people would label you as shy, socially awkward, or even arrogant, as if you think you're too deep for normal conversation. But today, we're going to flip that label. Psychology reveals that hating small talk isn't a character flaw or a lack of social skills. It is actually a sign of a very specific, high-resolution neurological architecture. In this video, we are going to explore the hidden psychological mechanisms that make surface-level chatter feel like a biological drain on your system. We'll look at the non-verbal scanner effect, the neuroscience of deep cognitive processing, and especially the one trait halfway through this video that you've likely mistaken for social anxiety, but is actually a rare form of intelligence used by the world's most perceptive minds. Let's decode the mind of those who crave the deep end. The social handshake, VSS. The data overload. To understand why small talk is so painful for some, we first have to understand why it exists for everyone else. From the perspective of evolutionary psychology, our brains are wired to connect sound with the safety of the group. Small talk acts as a social handshake, a way for two humans to signal to each other that they are not a threat before sharing real information. But for you, this handshake feels more like an interrogation. While the average person hears the words, "nice weather today," and simply agrees, your brain is doing something much more exhausting. You are likely what psychologists call a highly sensitive person, ESP, meaning your nervous system processes information much more deeply than average. When someone speaks to you, you aren't just hearing the 7% of their message that comes from words. Your internal radar is scanning the 38% found in their tone and the 55% hidden in their body language. You notice the slight stiffness in their shoulders, the way their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, and the micro-expression of exhaustion they're trying to hide. This is what science calls cognitive load. Your brain is like a high-performance computer forced to run a massive amount of data processing in the background just to handle a simple greeting. For you, small talk isn't small at all. It's an overwhelming flood of nonverbal noise that leaves your nervous system screaming for a power down. Sign 1. The deep cognitive processor. The first sign you might be part of this group is that you are often misunderstood as being slow or distracted during casual chats. When someone asks you a basic question, you might pause for several seconds before answering. In a society that values instant reactions and fast talkers, this silence can feel awkward. However, this delay is actually proof of deep cognitive processing. Your brain doesn't just look at the surface meaning of a question. It activates an entire analytical network, considering context, predicting motives, and weighing every word to ensure it is as accurate as possible. You would rather stay silent and structure a logical thought than say something loose or one-sided just to fill the air. This carefulness is a strength in complex problem-solving, but in a crowded social setting, it functions as a communication weakness. While others are playing a fast-paced game of tag with their words, you are playing a high-stakes game of chess. You aren't being rigid. You're being precise in a world that often rewards being loud. Sign 2. High need for cognition. Have you ever noticed that you feel more energized after a 3-hour debate about philosophy than you do after 5 minutes of hearing about a stranger's vacation? Psychology explains this through a concept called need for cognition, or NFC. People with high NFC are biologically wired to seek out and enjoy complex mental effort. Their brains crave stimulation, patterns, and deeper meanings. When you are forced to engage with empty topics like entertainment gossip, your brain doesn't find an anchor to latch onto, because there is no nutritional value for your mind in these conversations. Your brain starts to shut down or lose focus as a survival mechanism to save energy. You aren't trying to act superior or look down on others. Your brain simply feels like it's being starved of the information it needs to stay alive. Sign 3. The social hangover. The third sign is that you experience what is known as a social hangover. You might have a perfectly pleasant lunch with friends, with no drama or arguments, yet the moment you get home, you feel as though you've just run a marathon. You drop your bag, sit in the dark, and feel a desperate need for complete silence. This happens because your cognitive memory, the RAM of your brain, has been filled with tens of thousands of pieces of useless data you were forced to record. You've been tracking the waiter's frown, your friend's avoidant eyes, and the hum of the air conditioner all at once. Your body is literally going on strike, demanding that you dump the junk data so your system can return to balance. In clinical psychology, this is known as allostatic load reduction. You don't need a drink or a party to recover. You need to sit in a quiet room where no one is touching you or asking you anything. Sign 4. Subtitles before sound. Now we reach the trait that most people mistake for a flaw, but is actually a rare intelligence, the Matrix error finder. Have you ever felt like you're watching a movie where the subtitles appear before the character even opens their mouth? In a conversation, you often know exactly what the other person is going to say, or that they are about to lie, before they even finish their sentence. You catch the tiny tightening of their shoulders or the breath they hold back in their chest. Your brain identifies the incongruence, the mismatch between the happy words they are saying and the real energy they carry inside. This makes communication feel glitched and fake. You are forced to stand there for 10 seconds, nodding along to a polite script you've already decoded, while your mind is screaming for something real. This isn't social anxiety. It is a healthy neurodivergent background that allows you to see the errors in social performance. Sign 5. The authenticity craving. For people who hate small talk, the ultimate goal isn't just to get through a conversation. It is to find absolute authenticity. You are likely what Jungian psychology calls an internal processor, meaning you need to understand the structure of things before you feel comfortable. You crave soul-level connections. You would rather stay quiet at a party for 3 hours, and then stay awake until 3 a.m. talking to one person about childhood trauma, the universe, or the meaning of life. For you, surface-level procedures are just barriers that keep people from truly knowing each other. If a conversation doesn't offer a new understanding or a real connection, your brain labels it as background noise and stops giving it energy. You value quality over quantity, and while you may have very few friends, the ones you have are deeply bonded to you because you've seen past their masks. Sign 6. The hidden cost of empathy. The 6th sign is a paradoxical one. You are an incredible listener, but you find listening to be deeply painful. Because you process everything deeply, you don't just empathize with your mind. You empathize with your body. When you sit next to someone who is secretly angry or stressed, you absorb that energy like a sponge. This is called emotional contagion. You come home exhausted, not because the conversation was difficult, but because you've been processing the emotions of everyone in the room. You are being emotionally poisoned by people you aren't even close to. Small talk forces you to stay in this vulnerable, scanning mode for longer than necessary, whereas a deep conversation would allow you to actually address the emotion and release the tension. Sign 7. The protection of stillness. The final sign is your relationship with silence. For most people, a silence lasting longer than 3 seconds triggers a threat response in the amygdala. They feel they must fill the system error with any meaningless topic just to feel safe again. But you see silence as a functional space. It is the moment you use to digest information, structure a high-quality answer, or simply acknowledge that there is nothing truly valuable left to say. You are completely comfortable sitting with someone without needing to make noise. This calmness actually creates pressure on others, because you aren't reacting to the usual rhythm of conversation. People may call you cold or unapproachable. But in reality, your silence is an invitation for others to drop their masks and be real with you. So, if you are an orchid living in a world of dandelions, how do you survive the next holiday party or office meeting? You don't need to become a loud talker. You need the greenhouse strategy. Step 1. The pause protocol. Because you feel the disappointment of others so intensely, you often say yes to social invites you hate. Start using one universal line: let me check my schedule and get back to you. This creates a protective glass for your greenhouse, allowing your rational mind to decide if you actually have the energy to attend. Step 2. Externalize the noise. When you're stuck in an overthinking loop after a conversation, use cognitive externalization. Write down the problem in 3 lines. What happened? What am I worried about? And what is the smallest next step? This moves the invisible ghost from your head onto the paper, allowing your logical prefrontal cortex to take back control from your panicked amygdala. Step 3. Distance your self-talk. If you catch yourself beating yourself up for being awkward, switch to the third person. Instead of, "I sounded so stupid," say, "Nexa feeling a bit drained right now." This creates psychological distance and tricks your brain into giving yourself the same kind advice you would give to a best friend. In the end, your hatred of small talk is not a sign that you are broken. It is evidence of a mind with extremely high processing power, a mind that refuses to live on the surface. You are like a lighthouse. You don't exist to blend into the fog of casual chatter. You exist to pierce through it and show the truth. The world needs your depth, your ability to see through polished lies, and your courage to protect your own silence. Stop trying to turn yourself into a dandelion just to fit in. When you accept that you are an orchid, your sensitivity stops being a burden and starts being your greatest advantage. So, which of these signs hit closest to home for you? Or is there a small talk story that still makes you cringe? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be the life raft someone else needs to feel understood today. Be gentle with your sensitivity, but firm with your boundaries. I'll see you in the next video.